Alright, I have no idea how to start this. I do not have an intro, so I'm just gonna go ahead and wing it. So, I am going to be talking about my favorite book tropes. Um, and I've been thinking really hard about this. I always have wanted to create my own like video or whatever, talking about my favorite book tropes or things that I love to see in books. But then it turns out that I honestly don't really have that many. Maybe I'll make an updated one way into the future after I've read a lot more books. Um, because I've realized in the past that I've only usually stuck to like a select few books and I'd only reread those over and over again. That or I don't really remember the books that I've read. Um, Anyway, like if you watched my nostalgic reads video, you'll probably know like what I'm talking about. Um, anyway, so enough of that. I'm rambling again. I am just gonna go ahead and start the list of my favorite tropes in books. As usual, this list is in no particular order because I highly doubt that I'll be able to actually uh, rank these. Uh, so let me start with the first thing on my list, animals. So now this is just like a very general thing. Like as long as a book features animals, I just love it. I don't know why. Like I've always loved animals. A lot of books that I pick up, I've usually only ever read them because they feature animals. Again, if you've seen my nostalgic reads video, you'll know that I picked up a lot of books solely because there were dolphins in it. Because I used to be obsessed with dolphins in my younger years. Doesn't have to be dolphins that are featured. I'm going to give a few examples. So, Ranger's Apprentice. This is not the first time this series is going to come out in this list. That series has so many tropes that I love, and pretty much almost all of the tropes that I'll be talking about today are in that book or series. So, the character Tug is the main character's horse. I love what John Flanagan did with the relationship between the Rangers and their horses. That was like one of the highlights of reading that series. It's not very obvious in the very beginning of the series. Later on the series is where it actually becomes more established. I loved that. I also know I enjoyed um, the first book in the Farseers trilogy by Robin Hobb, Assassin's Apprentice. Even though, okay, I'm not gonna say anything because spoilers, but I loved that book because it featured dogs, because Fitz, the main character, has like this special connection with animals or whatever. Um, so I also really enjoyed that. I have read a bunch of books where it was just animals. So like Wings of Fire, it's like the entire thing is just dragons. Like there's no humans. It's in the perspective of dragons. There's the God and Warriors series where it has perspective of an animal. So in the first book, it has a perspective of a dolphin, plus the two main characters, and then in the second book, it has like there's a lion that gets thrown in there, and the lion gets its own perspective as well. A few more examples in this category of tropes or whatever, I guess. There was the Animal Healer series by Lauren St. John. There was the Silver Dolphin series by Summer Waters. There was Where the Red Fern Grows. Oof. Okay, I love that book. I read it when I was in middle school, and it's probably the first book that made me cry. I hope that's not spoilery. It made me cry. But I won't say why, although I don't know if it's obvious why or not. It's an old book, hopefully that's not really a spoiler. There was the Hotel for Dogs series by Lois Duncan. That was the other one. There was another book called The Storm by Dana Lawrence. That one as well, it's like the entire thing is on the perspective of dogs. They were left behind in this natural disaster scenario, and then like dogs had to form this like clan or something. I don't know, it sounds really weird, but I personally I really loved it because I loved dogs. The main character is a German Shepherd. I don't know why, I really loved that. So yeah, like I just find that I love animals. They can be talking, they don't need their own perspective. I just animals in general. Love it when they're there. Okay, so this next one, it's gonna be the father slash mentor figure. So this is like gonna be a more overarching trope. It's not just gonna be like the wise wizardly character. It's also going to include like a fatherly figure. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mentor, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I love it when there's like a relationship between characters where there's like a huge age gap, and then the older one kind of acts like either as an older brother slash sister or like a parental figure. I love that so much. And I'm gonna pull a lot of the same examples that I used in the first trope, as well as a few new ones. So again, Ranger Apprentice, the relationship between Halt and Will, it melts my heart. I love those two so much. Halt used to be my favorite character in that series. There is also Verity and Fitz's relationship from Assassin's Apprentice. I don't know, I just find it so adorable. There's this one scene where Verity like ruffles Fitz's hair. Like he does that a lot, and you know he like always comments on how Fitz looks like his father. I don't know why, I always found that so cute. It's so adorable. Then there's McKin and Jorg's relationship in the Broken Empire series by Mark Lawrence. Oof, I love McKin. I love the relationship. And this one, in that case, like McKin's not even like a mentor figure because Jorg does whatever he wants anyway. But McKin ends up becoming like a guardian, or like he gets a fatherly sort of relationship with Jorg. Gorgoth also, he's also another character from that series, and I loved him because he has this like kind of fatherly bond with another one of the characters as well. Um, and then there was Kelsier and Vin in Mistborn, The Final Empire. Oh, I loved that relationship as well. It's just so cute when it's like there's a guy. Usually I find this it's more common with male characters for some reason. I haven't really seen much where there's like a female character and she becomes like a motherly figure. I've only ever seen like a fatherly figure, and that's why this trope is just like the fatherly figure trope. I loved Kelsier's relationship with Vin, and like there's this one part where he was thinking of like, okay, I don't really know if this is spoiler, kind of mild spoilers. I'll put up a timestamp to skip to if you don't want to know anything. But there was this one scene where he was thinking about his, I believe it was his wife or fiance, something like that. And he was thinking of how like they wanted kids, and then he was thinking of how Vin is like the daughter that he never had or whatever. And I was like, oh, it made my heart clench. I love fatherly relationships, and it's like I like it more when they're not related, or like when they're not really the dad. So like Verity and Fitz, they're related, but Verity isn't Fitz's actual dad. But like I just love it. It's just so cute. Ooh, I actually thought of one where it's a motherly figure. It's Matilda, Miss Honey and Matilda. Oh, I think that's actually where my love for this trope actually spawned, which is kind of like I guess it's kind of weird because it's like the only like female parental figure that I can think of. But then everything else, every other book is was always like a more fatherly one. But Miss Honey and Matilda, I remember I loved that book because I loved the relationship between Miss Honey and Matilda, and I loved how Miss Honey was like such a protective teacher, and she just wanted the best for Matilda. And that ending, oh, oh, it's such a sweet ending. I love it. It warms my heart. Now that I think about it, there's actually one more series that I can think of that has a motherly figure instead of a fatherly one. It is Amanda and Will Trent from the Will Trent series by Karen Slaughter. Another one of my favorites. And this relationship, it's a lot more subtle than the parental relationships in like other books that I've seen, which is why I wasn't able to think about it until now. But now that I think about it, I think that might be one of the reasons why I love those series so much. It's because, but it's like a more complex relationship between them, though, because it's like Amanda is kind of more of like a tough love type of parental figure. She has a huge soft spot for Will, but she doesn't show it. She seems to Will thinks she's really cold, but for her, like in her perspective, she has this like huge soft spot for Will, and I think that's adorable. I love it. Um, Little side note. So that's another one. Really subtle, but it's still a dynamic that I really enjoyed. Yeah, so I'm gonna stop rambling about that. Yeah, okay, moving on. Let's just move on before I'm just gushing at this point. Alright, so these next two tropes, I guess they could be considered the same, but I'm just going to separate them just because I want to be more specific. So I'm going to talk about just friendships first. I love it when there's like a whole, ragtag type of friendship where it's like people from entirely different backgrounds, but then they come together and then they become almost like like found family, basically, is what it is. So, the gentleman bastards from The Lies of Locke Lamora. Oh, that dynamic between them. It was so fun. I loved that. There was also the brother band from Brother Band. I can't remember what their group was called. Um, we'll need to reread that. But Brother Band, which is kind of like the companion or spin-off series to Ranger's Apprentice. I loved the Band of Misfits element of those books. There was also oh yeah, that's also why I really loved Wings of Fire because these all these different types of dragons they were all gathered as babies. Like their eggs were stolen and then they like were born in like a cave and they're like from different clans or whatever because there are different types of dragons in it. But then they grew up together and they're like not never supposed to interact because there's this kind of like animosity between like different clans of dragons or types of dragons. But these guys, they grew up together and they just kind of became like a family. And oh, it was so cute. I loved it. So, found family, just strong friendships between people who have like completely like different backgrounds. I just love, or it doesn't even have to be different backgrounds really. Like if they're not related, or like they're like, or if they are related, they're in a friend group. Like it's just cute. I love it. It's adorable. That's also why I'm really looking forward to reading Six of Crows because I do know a dynamic like that exists in that book. So I'm looking forward to it. Now, while we're talking about friendships, let's move on to the next trope that I want to talk about. It's the enemies to friends. So I know enemies to lovers is like a hugely popular trope. And yeah, I do tend to like romances that start out that way. But enemies to friends, that is my favorite. That one, I think it kind of tops enemies to lovers. I love it when there's this animosity between these two characters in the beginning, but then they grow together and then they end up realizing that they need each other. Like they become really, really good friends, and it just, oof, it just makes my heart. So once again, Ranger's Apprentice, Will and Horace, that relationship. Oh, I love it. There's like, John Flanagan likes to do that a lot in his books. Because I'm pretty sure Hal and Stig from Brother Band also had like a similar dynamic. They used to be like enemies, or Stig used to be like almost like a bully, but then something happened and then they ended up becoming like best friends and then they would give their lives for each other. Like, oh, it's so I don't know, like I just love it so much. Enemies to friends, or like hate to love, but in a platonic way. I love that. I eat it up. There was also, like, Locke and John from The Lies of Locke Lamora. I know they didn't really start out as best friends, but then they eventually became like best friends. Like, it's so, like, I love that. It's so cute. Like, I also know that Legolas and Gimli from Lord of the Rings has a relationship like that. I really, really wonder. I haven't read it yet. I know. What am I doing with my life? I will read it. It's on my reading list. I plan to read it sometime this year, and I'm looking forward to it. Another book that does this. Spoilers for fifth season. So, fifth season's the relationship between Alabaster and Cyanide, and I'm not gonna count it because I know that they, ended up having a sexual relationship, but I will include it in this area because they don't consider each other in that way. Like, they don't want to have anything romantic with each other, even though they had a kid together. But they were kind of forced into it. Um, I also really enjoyed that, like, dynamic between them because I know, like, Alabaster was like the one who he like Cyanide really, really hated him, but then they ended up becoming kind of like almost like friends. I don't really even know if it really counts to be on this list because I don't really know if they ended up becoming like friends really. And it was a kind of like not platonic but platonic relationship because I know that they do go into kind of like a threesome relationship with Enon. I don't know how to say his name. I'm sorry. Um, but then they aren't really attracted to each other. It's only because of Inon that they were in that sort of relationship. So I don't know. It is a bit of like a more complicated relationship with between them, but I think I will kind of count them here as well because they don't consider each other in that way. They like each other as platonic friends more than like romantic partners. So I think I will include them here as well. Although it's a bit more of like it's an outlier, I would say. Another one that I can think of is Will and Faith from the Will Trent series by Karen Slaughter. I love Will Trent as a character. Oh, he's one of my favorite characters, and his relationship with Faith, they're police officers, and there's like, there's some complications because there was a point where Faith really hated him because he he was involved in something that happened with her mother, and so she really hated him. But then they ended up becoming forced, like they were forced to become partners for a case, and then like it ended up developing into this friendship, and it was entirely platonic. I loved that friendship. It's like Faith. And like I don't know, I shouldn't talk about it so much. It makes me want to talk about that series. Okay, I think I'll leave it off there for this trope. I would love to delve in deeper in some of the books that do this, but I don't think I have time for that. I'll end up making like hours. I'll be rambling for hours if I do. The final trope that I will be talking about is sisters. Okay, so I have two sisters, and last year, 2020, was when we actually kind of reconciled, I guess you could say. I don't want to get too much into it, but I feel like I grew a lot closer with my sisters in 2020. So this is actually like a fairly new trope that I really, really like. Um, because like I've realized that I love it in books when it features sisters and then it goes into their dynamic and it just like it's like so relatable and like I just love it, especially when they like butt heads sometimes like and but then they still love each other because they're sisters. I love it. There was a huge sister dynamic in Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. um oh, that book, I cried again in that book. And the dynamic between Lydia and Claire, like they're very like, they're very flawed characters, but like their dynamic and their relationship, like, oh, I don't know, it just like really like spoke to me. Like I really loved it. That's also why I'm looking forward. I am about to read Little Women, and I know that there's like a huge bond of sisters, because the main characters are sisters, and I know that they're very tight knit and they're very close, and I'm looking forward to exploring that dynamic. That's all I can really think about for sisters. I haven't actually read that many books that feature like sisters, but I do intend on looking for more that do this. So yeah, sisters is another big one. And those were 5 book tropes that I adore and I really, really love. Um, so thanks for watching if you've watched this far, and if you have watched this far and you know books that have any of these tropes, please definitely leave some recommendations. Um, Honestly, I don't even really know if anyone watches these types of videos, or any of my videos really, but it's fine if you do watch it. Please do leave a comment of a recommendation, because I'm very open to reading books that I haven't even heard of, and I would love, like, if they have these tropes, then I know that I'm gonna love them. So, yeah, I will be off now. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'm gonna go.